The sirens flashed, the sound of the siren cutting through the quiet afternoon like a knife. Latisha Matthews felt her pulse quicken, but not from fear. No, it was the familiar sting of something else, the gut-wrenching certainty that this stop wasn't about a traffic violation. It was about the color of her skin. Latisha Matthews, criminal defense attorney, had been pulled over by cops before, but this felt different. She had learned to brace herself for the moments where racial profiling made an appearance. This time, though, the officer's tone was sharper than usual, laced with something cold and calculated. He approached her car, his boots striking the pavement like a countdown. "Ma'am, do you know why I pulled you over?" the officer asked, his eyes scanning her face with unsettling scrutiny. Latisha's heart thudded in her chest, not because she was scared, but because she recognized the familiar pattern of profiling. The slight narrowing of his eyes, the dismissive glance at her black skin, as though he was already deciding what kind of person she was before she even opened her mouth. It was a feeling she knew all too well. "No, officer. I'm not sure," she replied, her voice calm but steely. The officer smirked. "You were speeding." Latisha could feel the tension building. Her hands stayed on the wheel, and her gaze remained steady. She knew she wasn't speeding. She hadn't been in the rush. But he wasn't going to let this go. He leaned in, eyes lingering too long on her. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. For a split second, she considered her options. She was a black woman in an unfamiliar, tense situation with a cop who didn't seem interested in the law, only his preconceived notions. But she wasn't going to back down. Not this time. With deliberate slowness, Latisha opened the door. The officer stood tall, intimidating, but there was something else in his eyes now. He wasn't expecting what was about to happen next. As she stepped out, her fingers brushed against her purse, but instead of grabbing her wallet, she pulled out something that made the officer freeze. A badge. The officer froze. His eyes flicked between her face and the badge in her hand. His confidence wavered. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. This wasn't a woman he could easily push around. "I'm an attorney," Latisha said, her voice now low, authoritative, as the power of her words sank in. "And I know what you just did. Racial profiling is illegal." The officer's hand moved away from his holster, a shift so slight that only Latisha could see it. He had realized his mistake. He had assumed she was just another black woman, a woman who didn't belong, whose rights didn't matter. But Latisha wasn't that woman. Not today. The officer stammered, searching for words, but the reality was sinking in too quickly. Latisha didn't wait for his apology. "What you're doing right now is against the law," she continued, her gaze unwavering. "I could have you reported for this. I suggest you think very carefully about what happens next." There was a silence that hung between them, thick and charged with the tension of justice waiting to be served. The officer shifted, the facade of authority slipping away, and in that moment, Latisha knew she had him. Just then, another car approached, the familiar rumble of a black SUV pulling up beside them. The door opened, and out stepped Detective Marissa King, a woman who didn't need a badge to command respect. Her presence was calm but undeniable. "Everything all right here, officer?" Marissa asked, her voice cutting through the air like steel. The officer's body stiffened, his face draining of color. Yes, everything's fine. Just a routine stop," he muttered, his eyes flicking between the two women, the realization that he was out of his depth setting in. Latisha smiled, the satisfaction of turning the tables washing over her. "I think we're done here, officer," she said, her tone now laced with finality. "But I suggest you think long and hard before doing this again." Marissa gave Latisha a subtle nod before turning her attention back to the officer. "I'll take it from here." The officer stood there for a moment, unsure of how to salvage the situation, but the words of his mistake were already hanging in the air. With a stiff nod, he turned and walked back to his car, his footsteps heavy with the weight of embarrassment. Latisha didn't need to say another word. Justice had been served in the quietest of ways. As she climbed back into her car, her heart rate returning to normal, She exchanged a brief look with Marissa. Thanks for the backup. Always, Marissa replied, a small smile tugging at her lips. But you had it handled. Latisha's grin widened. Sometimes, it's not about the badge you wear, but the strength in knowing who you are. If you love this story, share, like, and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories.